Hello. Trying again now. Restarted my computer and connected to my mobile phone internet instead of the Wi-Fi. Hopefully that covers all the problems that we had with the first attempt at this. So thanks to the people that have made it back in. I'll just try and give a few minutes for a few more people to get back in. But I'll run through some of the quick starting stuff that I always do for people who are watching on the replay, because I will probably end up deleting the last terrible attempt that had so many problems. So please tell me in the comments if you're having any problems again this time, but I'm hoping that this is going to work okay. I will start like normal by thanking the sponsor of these live streams, which is WeatherGuard Lightning Tech. They make strike tape, which is a retrofittable lightning protection system for things that go fast, like aeroplanes and wind turbine blades. Also mentioning my consulting company, Loop Consulting, which is the real sponsor of the whole Engineering with Rosie channel, because that's how I'm able to, justify spending all the time researching and putting this together. So we provide consulting services related to energy transition technologies, which includes technology due diligence for clean tech investors, right through to product development services. And the biggest thanks of all maybe needs to go to the Patreon team, the Engineering with Rosie Patreon team. We have a Discord server now that's starting to get quite a bit of action on it, and I'm enjoying participating in conversations and sharing interesting articles and podcasts that I've heard about topics. Also, there are a few videos coming up that were directly suggested by Patreons, so that's a good way. If you've got a burning desire to see a video made, then you can try joining up on the Patreon team and suggesting it. Okay, so we started the first go around of this stream. Had a few problems, and if you're watching the replay, you probably won't see them. So I'm just going to quickly recap what we covered that I'm not going to go back into again. But we've been going through some of the videos that I've done in the past and revisiting where there has been progress. So the topics that I'm going to try and get to today include the EV charger network plans in Australia, and Tesla has made some announcements too. That's what we covered in the first one, so probably we'll just revisit that quickly. Then latest progress on really big wind turbines, which is an update for this one. How big can wind turbines get? There's been some bigger and better wind turbines coming up. Then I've also got an update on MGA Thermal, which is this video about thermal energy storage system. They have some sales announced, some investment announced, and then one on hydrogen blending in gas pipelines, which is a video I did ages ago with Paul Martin, one of the more popular ones on the video. There have been some announcements about projects and also some studies as well on that. There's an update on NuScale small modular reactor. They've changed their estimate of what their levelized cost of energy is going to be. I also have seen some more information about this project I covered here, the world's dirtiest clean energy project. At that time I said why I'm a fan, but I've maybe changed my mind now. That's a liquid hydrogen shipping project, and there's been some more announcements there. And there is also just recently I did a video on solar geoengineering, and then just yesterday I think I saw that there have actually been some Australian scientists that have just published what they're saying is the first real world study of of solar geoengineering over the Great Barrier Reef. And then finally, video I did on can lithium ever be green with Alex Grant. I saw that he has a startup on magnesium, producing magnesium without mining, and they've just received some funding. So I don't think that I'll get to all of those, but I've put the links to all of them in the description for this video. So anything I don't get to, you can just check that out yourself. And everybody that's watching here, tell me if there's a specific one that you want to cover, and I'll try and get to it in that order. Okay, so I'll just see if we've got any comments. Lots of people just telling me that technology is working this time, so that's good. Alan Hat says part one has value, don't delete it. I shouldn't delete it. I would just think for my own pride, that like after about 3 years of YouTubing, maybe I should be able to manage some, the technical aspects of running a live stream, but yeah, don't seem to be able to. Okay, QA Library asks, am I going to do a video on e-fuel or has it been flogged to death? I don't think it's been flogged to death. I haven't flogged it at all. So I've got some flogging left to do at least. I do have a plan I've got quite a lot planned on heat, industrial heat and that sort of thing. And there is definitely a project related to that. That I have in mind to cover, but it's worth covering, definitely. I mean, I've got a long list of topics that I will eventually get to, and I'm trying really hard to start releasing more frequently. I'm hopefully going to be doing fortnightly, every 2 weeks for the next little while, and one day I want to be able to do weekly, but I just really need to get everything more streamlined, get the team working efficiently, and yeah, hopefully as the channel grows, then it will also produce a bit more money to allow me to pay the team to do that. Okay, Jim Arata says RIP, Dr. Goodenough, and that's a good point. Something that is definitely worth mentioning. So I think he was 100 years old, and he was one of the really early architects of the, of battery technology, all kinds of battery technology, actually. So made a lot of progress there, and I think also a Nobel Prize winner, and he just died yesterday or the day before. Okay. All right, so let's just quickly then recap what I said about the charging network. That was the first story, but yeah, okay, I'll leave the previous one up on the aborted live stream, and if you want to see the full discussion on that, then you can go check that out. But basically, there's plans in Australia to make an EV charging network. That means you'll never be more than 150 kilometers away from a charger, and yeah, it's going to be largely done by NRMA, and I thought it was cool and will be an interesting one to follow because a lot of these chargers, which I've just realized I'm not showing, a lot of these chargers are in places like really far away from the electricity grid, so they'll be needing to put like solar panels and batteries, maybe flow batteries, maybe the red flow ones that I covered a couple of videos ago. It'll be really interesting to see how they do that. So that will be interesting. And then we also talked briefly about how Tesla's adding other auto manufacturers to their charging network. And so it's kind of, the Tesla system is becoming like the default North American standard. Okay, so I'm just quickly going to move on now to the progress on really, really big wind turbines. So I wanted to I'll start a bit more logically with, so first of all, the biggest wind turbines that are available for sale, and I've actually seen getting installed in wind farms, are about 14 megawatts. So like there's a GE one about that size. Then there's this Vestas one, 15 megawatts. They've got a test turbine. I don't know where they're at with sales, but I personally haven't seen any, getting installed in commercial wind farms yet. And then there were some announcements recently about longer, bigger turbines. So there's a 16 megawatt offshore wind turbine successfully installed off the coast of East China's Fujian province, and be in commercial operation soon. So that one has, where does it say the blade length? Oh yeah, here it is. 123 meter long blades. And yeah, sweeping an equivalent area of about 7 standard soccer fields. So that is large. And then there's also this article about another turbine, which is slightly bigger, but it's just components are rolling off the factory floor now. So I guess they've made some progress, but let's see if it gets installed and commissioned and actually works. But this one is an 18 megawatt offshore turbine with 128 meter long blades. And there is a picture here of what I guess is their first blade that's just been closed. So you can see this what they call flashing across the side there. So when you make a wind turbine blade, you close two halves, and then there's kind of like a little lip that gets glued together, and then they will trim that and paint it and make it look nice. This one's probably a test blade because it's just got clear gel coat. Yeah, so that was even bigger. And then the other story I wanted to share was this new test facility in Massachusetts. There's a test facility for really long wind turbine blades, so 130-meter long wind turbine blades. So that is definitely pushing longer. There's been some other interesting stories in the news about this, technology development for wind turbines, which I'll probably refer you to the Uptime Wind Energy podcast, where we talk about, it's not entirely wind energy news, but it is a lot. And we've been talking about how investors have been saying, we need to slow down. We can't keep up with this level of, technology change, and wind turbines should stop getting bigger for a while so that we can all kind of pause. And I was sort of a bit critical about that, you can't really pause innovation. Otherwise you will, be left behind. Your competitors will sell a bunch of wind turbines and you won't. But then this week, the Siemens Gamesa CEO announced, which I've got that story here, announced that they have had a review into their a bunch of defects that they've had with, it looks like, with blades and bearings. They're saying it's they did a review, found 15 to 30% of their onshore fleet could be affected by problems, which were exposed during a review, which noted abnormal vibration behavior of some components. And when I say vibration, I'm assuming that they mean fatigue here, so like little bends like that, which is similar to vibration, because I noted blades which aren't vibrating so much as they're, bending a lot of times. And they've put the price tag for fixing all of that at $1 billion currently. Usually these kind of things get bigger. So I mean, in my work, I work a lot with wind turbine blades in the field, and I have definitely noticed that there are a lot more defects around now. And I would say from my experience that it's certainly not just Siemens Gamesa. They didn't stand out to me before this announcement. I see a finite number of blades, so I probably don't have the whole big picture, but I think, the last decade we've seen so much technical innovation in wind turbines, including getting really big, and the pace that it's happened has, probably inevitably caused some quality problems now. So that's kind of interesting in a sad way. Definitely push through. It's not the first time that, the wind industry has gone through issues like this, but that's the other side of the coin to, bigger and bigger wind turbines, I guess. So let's take a look, see if there's got any comments. China has put in a 16 megawatt in production, but has let no one test it or peer review it. Yeah, it is really hard to see what's going on in China, and sometimes they announce stuff and you never see it again. Like, follow a bit. Mingyang is always announcing the world's largest wind turbine over and over and over again. They announced a 16 a few years ago and then an 18 recently, but I don't ever see any of these turbines getting installed. Maybe they are secretly, but it's really hard to follow and be sure about what's going on there. And certainly I don't think, there's very few Chinese wind turbines that I have seen, like really few. So I couldn't really give any insider input at all. It's a funny comment from Brian Jungo. Rosie has engineered the sound back into the live stream. I bet there's nothing she can't do. There's a lot I can't do when it comes to computers and live stream. I did at one point try and do something tricky with, there's all sorts of things you can do with live streams. Like gamers do it all the time. It's beyond me, it turns out. So there's a lot I can't do. Okay, so QI Library says America could have an issue with wind turbines and offshore insulation. Assuming me installation due to the Jones Act. So the Jones Act, I'm pretty sure, is the act about like ships that do stuff in America have to be American crewed, maybe American built as well, or American registered. and it is a big problem. There's so few ships that can install offshore wind components that are also compliant with the Jones Act. So I think that some people are trying to get around that by doing tricky things like not having the ships ever make it all the way to the US, because they just stay offshore, and depending on where the turbines are exactly, they might be able to, be a bit tricky like that. But unless like a lot of ships start getting built now, then for sure the US's 2030 plans for offshore wind are really not going to happen if you don't get some more ships over there soon. Okay. Question from Ian A. Do the Chinese manufacturers have the quality problems as well? Like I said, I really, really, really rarely work on Chinese wind turbines. I know the company I used to work for, they had manufacturing facilities in China, and there were absolutely not quality problems out of those factories. Certain factories were known for having better or worse quality than average, and Chinese factories were good quality. In fact, you might be surprised to learn that North American factories were some of the ones that were more frequently having quality issues that had to be resolved. So I can't say about Chinese-owned manufacturers, but I don't think there's any issue. No one has any trouble believing that Chinese factories know how to make good wind turbines. Okay, Brian Jonga says, do the math on the area swept by those huge wind turbines. It's like 5 hectares. I farm many fields less than that. So yeah, I don't have a really good sense for how big a farm that is, but that is a nice comparison to make. Okay. Yeah, all right. Well, there's some other good questions, but I might move on. Okay, so what was the next one I wanted to cover was MGA Thermal. So they were the company, they had that hot brick. MGA stands for miscibility gap alloy. Let me just show. It is this one here. So, in the thumbnail, you can see the blocks there. And I think, it's in the thumbnail for this one too. And let me just, see here, maybe, I don't think they have a photo of it. But in the video, I went to Newcastle and toured their facility, and they're making these bricks. It's like a chocolate chip muffin was the analogy that they gave, where there's like little bits of metal, lumps of metal, which are like the chocolate chips in amongst, a brick material. That's like the cake part of the muffin. And when you heat it up, then the molten metal will melt, but it's contained because it's within the matrix of the brick muffin. And they have a lot of different things that you can do with them, but basically you heat the bricks up, they store heat, and then you get the heat back to generate electricity again, or if you needed heat. They were just recently, they got some backing from Shell Australia to help them with their demonstration plant that they're building. I really thought that I saw some sales from them too, but I couldn't find that again. So it might be that I kind of hallucinated that. It's interesting because I think I also saw that Shell is, for the most part, or a lot of those fossil fuel companies that were, trying to rebrand themselves as green, now that they've made a whole ton of money off the high fossil fuel prices recently, they seem to be, going back on that. But here's one project at least. Okay, so that was just quickly what I wanted to do there. All right, next story that I wanted to cover was, this one's a bit of a annoying one, hydrogen blending in gas pipelines. So that video I did quite a while ago with Paul Martin. So if you're new to the channel, you might not have seen it. It is one of the more popular ones, but it's a bit old. So, oh gosh, I recorded that when I was staying in Germany in the early days of the pandemic. So, in that video, we go through basically the physics of and the thermodynamics of storing hydrogen in gas pipelines, and how, because hydrogen, it's nice and light way to store energy, but it takes up a lot of space. And so if you blend hydrogen into natural gas because it's got lower volumetric energy density, then you're going to you're going to reduce the amount of energy in the gas blend, the more hydrogen that you put in there. And so you'll eventually be limited to not more than, say, 20%. If you're going to blend hydrogen into gas. And if you want to then push through and do 100%, then you're going to need to, upgrade compressors. And what I cut actually from that video, we did talk about it, but I didn't include it in the video, is some of the other problems, like hydrogen can cause pipes to get brittle, and leakage issues, safety issues, all sorts of things like that. So let me just... So that's the video there, if you want to go check that one out. I just wanted to start off with this tweet from Dr. Jan Rosenau. He is a heat pump guy. I follow him for his little updates on heat pumps. But anyway, he's also done like a meta review of studies that talk about hydrogen, the role that hydrogen will play in heating homes, which is, a large part of what you would do with it if it makes it into gas pipelines. He started off with 32 studies. He published this meta review in Joule. There was 32 studies that show that, it's not going to be a thing, hydrogen home heating, or it's going to be a very tiny niche thing. Now he's up to 40 studies that say basically the same thing. And, if you kind of follow the experts in this field, then you do just seem to see over and over again more and more studies showing, okay, hydrogen for home heating is a bad idea. Blending hydrogen and gas pipelines is a bad idea. I think that I picked, so you'll see a lot of kind of reviews like that. And I think that there was some from Fraunhofer as well. I saw did some study as well that showed something similar. But then I don't have stories saying, okay, everyone's realized that this is a silly idea and they're going to, divert their green hydrogen plans to sectors that need it more than home heating. Instead, I've got some plans for rolling out hydrogen for home heating and blending in gas pipelines. So there's this one, new 10 megawatt electrolyzer to feed gas into homes. Experts shake their heads. So that kind of sums up my response to it too. It's in Wodonga. And I think that this comes off the back of this. There was an ARENA, Australian Renewable Energy Agency grant to look at blending. And I think they were already doing about 5% blending. I listened to a podcast on it that really kind of made me kind of annoyed, because there was some representative from the company that's doing it, and noting that this company, they own gas pipelines, and this is what I would interpret as every hydrogen blending into gas pipeline project. It starts out with somebody that owns gas pipelines and it's like, if we're transitioning away from gas, what are we going to do with our gas pipelines? So they're looking for something that they can do with the gas pipelines. It's not like anybody is saying, oh gosh, how are we going to heat our homes in a zero emissions economy, and then coming to the conclusion that you should do hydrogen. Like, it never goes that way around. It's always the opposite. It's always, okay, we know the solution is pipelines. What's a problem that we can fit that so that we continue to have some value for our assets. When I listened to this podcast and they were blending in 5%, and they said, and we're not even going to charge our customers more for that. And I just thought, well, no, you shouldn't be charging them more. You should be charging them less, because they're getting slightly less energy for, every unit of gas. They're going to have to burn more. So actually, in that video with Paul Martin, he said it's like watering down, putting water in your gas tank. You can do it to a certain point, people won't notice, but it's it's not really adding energy, it's doing the opposite. Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to go off on too much of a rant about that, but yeah, apparently we're planning this. I don't know why. Surely there's smarter people in government, especially in Australia. Like, we don't have that cold temperatures. Like I said in the first live stream, it got down to -6, maybe even -7 in Canberra last week. And that's like, we're all talking about that. Oh my God, it was so cold. It happens, most years we'll get down to -5, and Canberra being the coldest capital city in Australia, it's a few mornings like that. There's no problem with the heat pumps to get those temperatures. You see heaps of heat pumps being rolled out in like Finland and Norway and stuff. It can cope. So it's crazy to me, especially because in Australia we also don't have this big problem with not having solar power in the winter. We still have lots of clear skies in the winter, and like there's a difference in obviously the amount of solar power that you get from summer to winter, but it's only like double or something like that. It's most extreme. Okay, yeah, so comment about that. Boo, Batty Big says it's like adding more expensive water that burns less well. Yeah, pretty much. Yes. Okay, and then the last story on the hydrogen blending. I just saw China's building a 6,000 kilometer hydrogen pipeline network to transport green hydrogen from renewables rich regions. Maybe I should have brought up a map here, but it is interesting in China. They're doing everything, everything good and everything bad. And I definitely want to do a video on China's energy transition coming up soon, because every technology that I cover, it's China that's rolling it out the fastest. So, like concentrated solar power, hydrogen pipelines, still building coal power plants, but slower than before. Heaps and heaps of high voltage DC, which will probably be my next video, will be on interconnectors. So that's very interesting. But sometimes I wonder if they have a strategy, or if the strategy is just more of everything, just more and more and more of absolutely everything. But they do have an interesting problem, because similar to some other places, where their renewables are good is not where people live. So I guess we have that problem in Australia to a certain extent. We have a lot more sun in the deserts, which are far away from any electricity grids. But Australia also has good renewable resources close to population, so it's not really a problem for us, more of a wasted resource. The US has something similar with wind. The wind is, all in kind of in the middle, and people live on the edges of the US. And then in China, everyone lives on the east, and all the renewables are really good on the west, both for sun and for wind. And so I guess they're looking at ways to bring it over. If they're going to build dedicated hydrogen pipelines, then I guess that's a better way to transport than liquid hydrogen, which I will probably move on to in a second. But you still can't escape the inefficiencies of anything that you want to do with hydrogen. If you're making it with electrolyzers, then you lose efficiency there. And then when you try and make it back into electricity or burn it for heat, you'll always end up with like 2 to 5 times more renewable electricity needed at the start than if you had just directly electrified. So it kind of seems on brand for them that they would be doing it, since, like I said, they're doing everything. But I can't see that. Like, I would just put more into transmission if I was them. So Brian Junker says, have you ever covered the James Bay project in Quebec? Exports a bunch of electricity to Boston and the surrounding states. I haven't. Is that the transmission that is it HVDC that, or maybe that's more a planned project? But I know obviously they've got all the hydro in Quebec and lots of people in northeastern US. So short answer, no, Brian, I haven't. And if you tell me a little bit more in another comment, then I'll include that in upcoming videos. Kaiser Rusum says, I don't have a source at hand, but I remember reading something about China's coal developments being partially an internal politics issue with provincial industry. Yeah, I listened to a really interesting podcast on that recently, and I also don't have the source at hand. But that podcast suggested that every province is like an energy island in China. They're not actually so much sharing from place to place. And yeah, there was some really interesting political incentives to not just building more coal, but also preferentially using coal rather than allowing renewables to generate. There was some weird stuff happening there. Anyway, I don't fully understand. I just listened to a couple of podcasts, and like I said, I do really want to make a video on that. I'm still trying to search for a Chinese energy expert so that I can get the insider info, because I don't think it's really very valuable to have some Australian that's been to China once, standing around telling you all about how electricity and energy system works in China, when I don't have the inside experience. Okay, so Rick Rees has a comment about hydrogen. Many electrolyzers are installed at the point of use to avoid pipelines. I think it's got to be the only way to go in the future, right? That most people that want to use hydrogen will be making it close to where they want to use it, because just transporting it in any sense is a pain. Yeah, that's my expectation, but I am kind of tracking to see how it goes. And I have been surprised by some stuff with hydrogen. Boo Batty Big says, high pressure hydrogen storage in salt caverns for power storage might have legs in the UK. A couple of terawatt hours storage seems possible. I think this is the main thing that hydrogen's going to do. It's going to do that very last little bit of energy security, and it is a way to store a lot for a long time and use it infrequently. It's going to be super expensive to do that, but the only alternative for stuff that you wouldn't even need every year, just like maybe every few years, the only alternative to that is fossil fuels, which in my opinion isn't actually that bad of a thing. If you have something sitting around to use for 1 week every 5 years, that's not very many emissions, so I wouldn't put that high up on the list. But I do think when we get to the point of needing to solve that last bit, that it is going to be hydrogen storage. That's my expectation now. I got a question about hydrogen boil off, and I don't have those figures now, but that's definitely very relevant for the next one that I want to cover, which, it's in, I might as well do it now actually, which is the one about the liquid hydrogen export. I covered that in this video way back a year ago, world's first liquid hydrogen export, and I called it the world's dirtiest clean energy project and why I'm a fan. And so it is a project that takes brown coal from Australia, from Victoria in the south. They gasify it, and they make hydrogen from that brown coal. The CO2 from that reaction currently is just released into the atmosphere. They plan to one day do CCS, but they are not that close on that yet. And then they put it in trucks and take it to a port where they liquefy it, put it on a ship, which is a modified ship. It was modified from a LNG ship. I think it's Kawasaki. And then they transport that to Japan, where they're going to do, whatever Japan's going to do with it. Japan thinks that they're going to do lots of things with hydrogen. So it's a really, really inefficient way to get energy from Australia to Japan, and also a very polluting way. You certainly have much less CO2 emissions if you would just ship the brown coal to China and let them burn it there. That would be much better. You get losses from converting the coal to hydrogen. You get losses from transporting it. You get losses from compressing it. And then on the ship, because it's liquid, there's a lot of boil off. I never even saw anyone say how much of the hydrogen actually made it to Japan. It was a really small volume to start with, kilos. At least not that many kilos. I never saw how much actually made it there. And then you got losses from the inefficiency of, taking that liquid hydrogen and doing whatever you want to do with it, whether it's burning for electricity or using it in a fuel cell. So super inefficient. And the reason why I said in the first video, I'm actually a fan, was because I just wanted to see someone do it, realize how crazy it was, and then, be kind of a cautionary tale to anybody else that thought that they were going to have heaps of liquid hydrogen exports all around the world. And then we wouldn't do that anymore. We would have learned early and not gone down that path and kind of pursued other options. However, at the time, there were plenty of comments that said that's not how politics work. And, once a demonstration project like this is done and people have political, reputations tied up in the project, then it's definitely going to proceed from there. And they were right. So I was politically naive. We've seen now that they have plans. This article's more than 3 months old, so it's a little while ago that they made this announcement. But Japan's now spending $2.35 billion on turning Victoria and Latrobe Valley coal into clean hydrogen. And it's clean hydrogen. It's in inverted commas on the Guardian. So that's good, because first of all, I mean, it's never going to be fully clean if so it comes from brown coal, right? Coal mining has a whole lot of emissions associated with it. I haven't seen their plan for getting rid of that. If they think that, it's going to be clean, you can't just capture it, right? In a carbon capture plant, because it's the whole mine area. So that's first source of emissions. Secondly, they will need to capture the carbon from the gasification plant. They haven't done that yet. That won't be 100% efficiency. You could get close if you wanted to, but it's expensive. So, you can maybe assume about 90% capture for it then, once they decide to do it. Then they need to transport the CO2 and store it. And they're still at the stage of kind of, having a bit of a look at what sites might be possible around. They certainly haven't progressed. They're not advanced in their plans to capture and store this carbon. Australia hasn't managed to capture any carbon successfully. We've, all of the projects that we've got with carbon capture are just, perpetually getting updated with, more and more leakage and sands clogging up pipes and stuff like that. And so then they're going to, ship that to Japan and lose a bunch of the hydrogen along the way through boil off, and do something with it in Japan that they could have done with some other kind of energy storage medium or energy source. So that's their plans. I don't know how they can say that it's clean. I mean, from Australia's point of view, it's obvious to me that this project is a way to continue to think that there's some value in Victoria's brown coal, because it's the more dirty kind of coal. You could do the same plan with any kind of coal and it would be slightly more efficient, but it's obviously a way to keep on using coal rather than any kind of clean energy project. And from Japan's point of view, Japan's another place I'd like to make a video on their energy transition, because I think it's got interesting politics. They have a challenge in that they don't have great onshore renewable energy generation capability. But I think that floating offshore, maybe geothermal, I think that some interconnectors, I think there's going to be other ways that are going to end up being much, much cheaper than this. This is such a expensive and dirty plan. And I mean, Japan isn't only looking at this place for hydrogen import or export. They're looking at a few other places. Like, this just has got to be the bottom of the barrel. Surely, I hate this project so much. So I was like, my original video was why I'm a fan, but that was just like a kind of a cheeky title that surely this will make everyone realize how stupid this idea is. But here we go. Everyone thinks it's a great idea apparently. So okay, let's have a look and see what comments we've got. There's a few on China, and actually a good suggestion. Reach out to Dan at Fully Charged. They have contacts in China, and there was actually one of the guys at the Fully Charged live that I did with them earlier this year. They have a guy that lives in China and does content there, and I did mean to talk to him about that, and I didn't, and I'm just realizing that now. Okay. And Kaiser Rusam says, good luck finding primary sources in China with a language barrier and geopolitical rivalry. Yeah, but I mean, there are so many Chinese people in Australia. There's a huge Chinese community here. So I don't think it should be that hard. But let's see. It would be definitely a challenge to actually, manage to go over to China and film there and feel confident to, say what I really thought about it. But I do think that I should be able to get, an expat or someone that understands the energy system that will talk to me about it. So I just need to try harder. Okay. All right. So now on this liquid hydrogen plan, QA Library says that sounds like a horrific way to make H2. I mean, surely it's like, if you had to come up with the dumbest way to make clean hydrogen, that's what you would pick, right? That's why it's like such a joke, It's just like their serious plan with billions of dollars of funding behind it now, and all these politicians like calling it clean and part of the energy transition. It is like a joke, but it's coming true. Okay. comment, making liquid hydrogen is a bit of a nightmare because it takes a huge amount of energy to chill it. That's right, to chill it, to keep it chilled, and then it boils off. So you lose it, you lose some of your product for every kilometer that you've got to ship it. Alan Hatt says there's at least one company composting to make methane, and finished landfill is tapped for methane. Seems more useful than hydrogen. Yeah, I mean, we have landfill gas capture a lot in Australia. I've never made a video on that. I think it must exist elsewhere as well. I know not as much in Europe because they don't have as much landfill, but yeah. Okay, Jim Murata says they should just make methane and liquefy that in a tanker, carbon capture when it gets to Japan. Yeah, or I mean, just there's so many different ways that they could attack that, and I think actually this one sums it up the best. Clean coal with lots of laughing faces. Yeah, that of all the things, I don't hate carbon capture. I think that it has a role to play in the energy transition, but it's not going to be to clean up coal. That's like the dumbest, hardest, least least effective thing that you could do with it. It's we need it for like cement, maybe for bioenergy and carbon capture, or at least there will be some of that. And then I guess direct air capture as well. All those things, I think they have a role to play, but clean coal, no. I mean, coal is already too expensive to compete with renewables. And then you're going to add like this super duper expensive bit of kit onto it. And actually here I should go back and show the video that I did on this one on carbon capture, which was over a year ago now. That's actually one of my favorites still, because it is pretty hard to research, how carbon capture works. But one of the things that I learned from Mark, the expert I had, the chemical engineer I had on that video, learned from him that it takes about 30% of the extra energy to capture the carbon from a power plant. So, if you've got a 1 gigawatt power plant, then, all of a sudden you've got a 700 megawatt power plant because you've got to use most of your energy for capturing the carbon. So, it's not, it can never be as cheap or cheaper than coal. It's always going to be much more expensive. And renewables are already cheaper. Coal's already going out of business even when we don't price carbon in Australia. So it's crazy. Okay, so I'm nearly through, I think, all of the... I think I can just really quickly do the last 3 topics, and then we'll come back for a bit of a chat. I mean, it's kind of, I've gone past the time that I wanted to, but then I got a bit messed up with all the technical stuff. So let's go to NuScale now. I'll show you this one again. I talked with Dr. Jose Rees. He's one of the co-founders of NuScale. And then at the time, they were planning... I've got a good chart here. Yeah, so when I talked to them, they were, in this level of, under $60 per megawatt hour levelized cost of energy. And then they've just had an update in January. It says $89, but that includes a $30 per megawatt hour subsidy from the IRA bill. So really it's $119 per megawatt hour. So they've doubled in a couple of years what their planned cost is. So I'm not going to comment on whether that's good value or bad value. Certainly nuclear can do a lot of things that renewables struggle with, and certainly in some locations that will be more necessary than others. But it certainly is not, small modular reactors are supposed to be way cheaper than regular nuclear, and it's looking less and less likely that that's going to happen. That's pretty much all I will say about that one. Then we'll move to solar geoengineering, which is a really recent one that I did just 3 videos ago, one that I did in collaboration with Climate Atom. And I saw this article, scientists researching cloud brightening in a bid to call Great Barrier Reef to present findings. So they're saying that this is the first, I think I saw that this is the first real world trial that's being reported in, the scientific community. So this is one of the things that I talked about in the video was that shipping routes, they already kind of have this solar geoengineering happening as a side effect, because they release particles into the atmosphere, and it reflects sunlight, and so stops the oceans from heating up. And some scientists have done this over the Great Barrier Reef to try and cool it. So that's good to protect the reef, but I just feel so nervous about messing with the atmosphere. I did come to the conclusion that my opinions are a bit irrational because we already do things that we know affect the atmosphere all the time, namely releasing CO2 emissions. It's just that is a negative thing, and we're hoping this one will be a positive. I don't know. My brain wants to say, yeah, we should do solar geoengineering, but just my heart can't get on board. I just instinctively don't like it. But yeah, I guess it's irrational. Tell me what you guys think about that. And maybe that was the last topic that I wanted to quickly mention. Oh no, the last one was, let me just open it. Okay, I've managed to open it. So this one is about Alex Grant, who is the guy that I talked to about lithium mining. Can lithium ever be green? And he's got a new startup, on a magnesium-based startup, plans to make metal without mining, and he just raised a $10 million seed round for that. Sounds very exciting. I haven't talked to him about it. I would love to. It's a bit earlier, probably. Usually I have the rule that on this channel I only talk about things that are like technology readiness level 5 or more, things that are imminently about to be commercialized. I don't usually do like lab bench reporting, but you can see there's some pretty good investors that have come on board, and he's a super smart guy, so I'm expecting that to go well. So I just wanted to quickly mention that had happened. I haven't really looked into it too much yet. Okay, so that's the last topic I wanted to talk about. Let's just see if there's some comments, and then we'll wrap up. But we've got one from Sundon. How about a fun video, Dr. Rosie, instead of all these super serious ones, you're bird watching or something else you like besides work? I like these, but I'm not an engine nerd. Okay. So, I mean, I have been trying to do a few fun ones. And I mean, I will caveat this with saying that I actually think that engineering is really fun. So that's the problem, is that I am a huge engine nerd. And so this is my idea of fun. But I've noticed, I try and do fun ones and they don't necessarily go so well. So, this one was supposed to be a bit of a fun one. Wind turbines on Mars, can you do that? And it had less than 10,000 views. And my original lesson, my most favorite video that I ever did, by far the most effort I ever put into a video, was this one, my gingerbread wind turbine. So Sundon, if you haven't seen that, then go check that out. I made a wind turbine out of gingerbread, and it actually works. Like, the generator isn't gingerbread, but everything else is edible. And I made it, tested it, and spent a couple of weeks full time on this video, and it had very few views. So that was my lesson learned, that no one comes to me for fun engineering. They come for the super serious ones. But I I would love to take your advice, but I'm not sure. Oh, here's another fun one about an interest of mine: energy storage options for the clean energy transition. 1.6 thousand views. That's probably the biggest bomb out of anyone. Another one where I did wave energy, and I went surfing for that. Less than 10,000 views. So I guess that answers your question why I don't do them so much, because they just don't tend to go well. And it really it does take a lot for me. Every video that I make, it takes a lot. It costs money. If I don't get 50,000 views on a video, then it will lose a bit, and it's the Patreon that fills in for that. And also my consulting company, I kind of consider it advertising. That's how I designate the amount of time needed to make these. but it's hard for me to make a video that I am pretty sure won't go well. So that's the issue. And so, okay, so, oh, whoops. Are these people not real Dr. Rosie fans? I don't think that I have very many real fans. I think it's more that people come here for the issues, not for me. That's my take on it, which is perfectly preferred by me. Okay, a few people are saying that they did see that one, and yeah, time to double down with an edible generator. That would be really cool. And you know, one day when I have like Mark Rober style levels of views, then maybe I'll have the resources to devote to that. That would be pretty cool. Yeah, so that's, I think, most of the comments covered. Thanks everybody for coming back and watching, and sorry for the technical problems with the first one. But yeah, let's wrap up. I did want to talk about some upcoming videos. I may get a chance to visit some projects in Southeast Asia in a few months' time. And if I do manage to swing that, I want to get all of the value I can out of the trip and the carbon emissions from that flight. So does anybody know any experts out there on energy or transport in the region? Because similar with the China video, I would want to be talking to someone from there. So yeah, let me know if you know any YouTubers or anyone who writes good articles or anything on that sort of thing. And then yeah, thanks again to WeatherGuard Lightning Tech for sponsoring this live stream. We also have a great tech newsletter. WeatherGuard has a great tech newsletter that they release, and the link is in the description to that. You can sign up and get those emailed to you. And we have a weekly podcast, which I co-host with Anne Hall and Joel Saxum each week. Links for that are in the description too. We talk about all kinds of clean energy tech news, and especially a lot about wind. The latest one that's out now, we talk about actually a bird detection system, Identify, which I did mention in the bird video that I did. And actually after I made my video, I talked to a guy who was managing the environmental aspect of an Australian wind farm, and got some more information, some more details about how that system works. And yeah, I talk about that in the podcast and a few other things. And then they come out on Tuesdays, and the one that comes out next Tuesday will have all of that Siemens Gamesa stuff. So if you thought that was interesting, the issues that they're having with their blade quality, then we just recorded it yesterday. I had a really good conversation about how the wind turbine design process works and what it's like in the industry, and how these kind of issues can happen. And so yeah, some really good insider perspectives there. So check that out. Thanks again, everyone on Patreon. And if you wanted to, you could join us at this link here. It's also in the description. Thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you later on. Bye.